What's up guys, LeopoldTheBrave here doing what I do best and looking way too far into the future. I mean, we still have the Crash mobile game to get to, and the rumored PvP game to get to. Crash 5 won't be happening for a bit, but that doesn't change the fact that it is still happening. So when Crash Bandicoot 5 eventually does come, it's likely going to bring some brand new mechanics and changes just like Crash Bandicoot 4 did, but it's also going to carry some stuff over. So this video is going to be all about which elements from Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time Crash Bandicoot 5 should take, and which ones it should also leave behind. And I'll be sure to alternate between the two so the video doesn't get boring and stale. Anyways, with all of that said, let's begin. Why don't we get the big one out of the way first, the Quantum Masks, and I actually think they should carry over into Crash Bandicoot 5. Their presence should just obviously be much smaller. With how Crash Bandicoot 4's story went, it looks like the Quantum Masks are here to stay. It wouldn't make sense for them to just disappear entirely during the next game. Now, the Wrath of Cortex got criticized way back when for just repeating what Crash 3 did instead of doing its own thing, so of course the Quantum Masks should take a back seat so Crash 5 can have its own innovation, but they shouldn't be gone entirely. Perhaps maybe only 1 or 2 levels dedicated to each mask, or maybe just a handful of levels that uses all of the masks at once. Or even perhaps their own little dedicated world where they're self-contained there. I think their gameplay is fleshed out and unique enough to where they can remain a series staple, like Sonic did with the Wisps. Just make sure they don't overstay their welcome outside of Crash 4, like Sonic also did with the Wisps. As for something big that Crash Bandicoot 5 should leave behind from Crash 4, how about the boss battles? No, I don't mean the concept of boss battles entirely. Of course a Crash game has to have boss battles. I just mean the way that Crash 4 does boss battles. I don't know why I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, but all of them are kinda the same. Just dodge projectiles until an enemy shows up and then throw the enemy at the boss. That's how Engine is, that's how both Cortex fights are, that's even how Embryo is until he changes into his Hulk form. Even the Entropy battle was kinda like that. You never actually fight the bosses, you just throw things at them whenever a chance shows up. There's no expertly timing TNT crates to explode whenever the boss lands near them like the Ripperoo fight in Crash 1, there's no tricking the enemies into jumping into bottomless pits like the Tiny Tiger fight in Crash 2, and there's no luring the enemy into destroying their own crystal barrier so you can create your own opening to attack them like the Dingodile fight in Crash 3. In Crash 4, all the boss fights have the bosses sitting in some inaccessible machine or platform until you can throw things at them. So I think Crash Bandicoot 5 needs to ditch this method of boss fight and bring back the more interactive and personal kind where you can control the pace of the fight based on your own skill. The next thing Crash 5 should carry over from Crash Bandicoot 4 are the alternate timelines. Now obviously they wouldn't be called alternate timelines because I doubt Crash 5 would use the time travel plot for the 3rd time in a row. I mean, maybe they would, who knows, and who cares as long as it's unique. But either way, the concept of more playable characters should definitely stay because they were a huge success, especially characters like Dingodile and Tawna. And because we're down a player and gameplay style, since I doubt they'd reuse the Cortex joining forces with Crash plot again. I don't know, they might, I doubted the time travel thing. But with Cortex's gameplay gone, that opens the door for something entirely new. Lots of Crash Twinsanity fans are saying that Tawna's gameplay actually reminds them a lot of Nina, because of her grappling hook. So perhaps they could base a new gameplay style off an old one that'll be familiar to some parts of the fanbase. Here's one neat little idea I had for whenever they decide to reintroduce Crunch into the main series. Since Crunch has never been playable in the main series before, I figured they could give him more of a beat-em-up style, give a little treat to the fans who were there for Crash of the Titans and Mind Over Mutant. And since Crunch is mechanical, perhaps he can use his robot arm to hack into giant robot enemies and control them, in place of, mind controlling the Titans. Just a neat little concept and treat for the fans who still stuck around Crash even when things were getting at their worst. The next thing Crash 5 should leave behind are the perfect relics. Now it's not the fact that they're hard or anything, they just feel a little bit pointless. If we can get the crate gem, it pretty much proves that we're capable of getting all the crates, which likely means we've gotten all the Wumpa gems too. And then if we get the time trial relics or the flashback tapes, it proves that we can get through the level without dying. Proving we can do all of it at once for every single level is a bit more tedious than it is entertaining, because we've already played through the game once, then we played through all the levels inverted, and then we pretty much play through half the levels again twice because of the alternate timelines in their inverted modes. And then there's all the time trial runs and an extra run for anything we may have missed, like hidden gems or colored gems. There's gonna be so many runs where you basically play through the entire game over and over and over, and the perfect relics are just not an entertaining way for the final loop around. So for Crash 5, they just need to come up with something a bit more interesting. The final thing Crash 5 should bring from Crash 4 are the flashback tapes. Believe it or not, but the flashback tapes are probably my favorite new addition to the Crash Bandicoot series. I love the insanely challenging platforming and the tricky puzzles. Not to mention we got to learn some cool story tidbits too. There's just one problem though. The flashback tapes are flashback tapes. They show us Crash and Coco's creation and training process in the original trilogy. They can't exactly do that again. I have a solution though. Just give them a simple reskin. Call them Temple Training. In Crash Bash, The Wrath of Cortex, and the Titans games, we can see Aku Aku and Uka Uka occasionally go to these temple-like areas. They go there when they argue at the beginning of Crash Bash. This is where Aku Aku confronts Uka Uka about the elementals. And if my memory is correct, Aku Aku would teleport you to these temples in Crash of the Titans and Crash Mind Over Mutant, where you could train and learn how to use each Titan. So for the flashback tapes, or temple training in this case, Aku Aku could simply teleport you to a training temple where you complete platforming and puzzle challenges, while he gives you tidbits and lore about the masks and his and Uka Uka's backstory, which is something fans have also been wanting to know about. And finally, the last thing Crash 5 should leave behind from Crash 4 is a very, very small one, but I have my reasons. Now, aside from the quantum masks, there are a couple other brand new game mechanics that Crash 4 brought to the table. The rail grinding, the zip lining, the new and enhanced slide jump, the triple spin, and they're all great and should stay, but the one I think needs to go is the rope swing. Every time I see a rope swing in Crash 4, I just think, why don't they let me Akano glide over there? Or, why don't they just put a Lani Loli platforming phase shift challenge there? And if you're good enough, sometimes you can even make it over these rope swing gaps without having to grab the rope at all. I just think the rope swinging is way too slow, it breaks up the pace of levels, especially when you've got a good momentum going, and there's not really many challenges you can do with it. They're just kinda pointless when you can fill those giant gaps with something way more interesting. But let me know what you guys think. Which things should Crash 5 carry over from Crash 4, and which things should it leave behind? Let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time. Leopold the Brave, out.